Thank you for being here. So this is super exciting because I'm not going to introduce Simon because everybody knows who Simon is. But it's super exciting because Simon has not done this since the beginning of the pandemic, and he will probably not do this again because he's stopped doing public engagements in terms of speaking, and he can probably explain why. But he did this because he loves us. He loves you guys. He loves what you do. He loves the company. And I will tell a story because it's a story that I think is relevant of how we met. So we met, do you remember when we did the pub down in Miami during Art Basel? Some of you were involved and were there. It was a cool event, and we invited David Copperfield to come. Sarah's there. Sarah invited David Copperfield. And it was like, oh, David Copperfield, okay, great. And then David invited Simon to join. So Simon comes with David Copperfield, putting his shirt down, and he's coming through the boat, and every time somebody would come up towards him, he'd be ready to put his hand out to shake, and people go to Simon and say, "Hey Simon, nice to meet you. It's great that you're here." And David Copperfield would be standing there like, I was the one who was invited. I should have never invited him, But needless to say, you're a bit of a kind of rock star at Four Seasons as well. And we're lucky because we had the opportunity to have Mr. and Mrs. Sharp with us last night. And Mr. Sharp is a rock star in the company as well. So we got two rock stars now in the company. It's great.
It's a Lollapalooza.
It's a Lollapalooza, yeah. So super proud. As I've told you, we spent yesterday all day reconnecting. It's the first time we reconnected in 5 years.
Yeah.
And as you know, there's been bit of a disruption over the past couple of years, to say the least. No travel. So I know you just got here, right? And it's one of the first international trip you've done in a while. So how did that feel? Yeah,
this is the second international trip I've taken since pre-COVID, since 2019. I still keep saying last year and mean 2019. The first one I went to London and Paris and Stockholm, and I got COVID in Stockholm, those bastards. But this trip has been wonderful as well. It's wonderful. It's nice to be on the road again. Not for work. It's nice to be traveling again, is what I mean.
And the process of traveling and getting to a hotel like this, anything changed in your perception versus prior to COVID?
Some people. I have to say, I love wearing masks. I think it's the best thing in the world. It's like
You're serious?
Oh yeah, I love it. I wear a mask on my flights. I think it's the best thing in the world. It's nothing to do with COVID. I don't want your cold. I don't want your cough. I don't want your flu. I've gotten sick so many times being on planes that now that the sort of social acceptance in the West to wear a mask. You have to consider the difference between the East and the West. The East, if you're sick, you wear a mask to prevent other people from getting sick. In the West, we wear masks to prevent getting sick from you. I think the East has something figured out that we don't. It's a sort of public service. But anyway, I still love. I'm all about it.
I think you should join our Lead with Care program. Dr. Zenneman is going to be very happy to meet Simon.
Yeah, I'm big into service. If you're sick, wear a mask. I think it's a great idea.
So obviously, the pandemic of the past 2 years has been obviously a huge disruptor. Mm-hmm. Hospitality has been impacted more than many other industries, as you know. Mm-hmm. And this team here has done an incredible job, not only surviving but really thriving through it. But from a leadership skills perspective, from how you lead people post-pandemic, what do you think are some of the big shifts and big changes that we have to adjust to as leaders as we lead our teams in this new world?
When COVID hit, it was fun to sit back and watch the leadership reactions of organizations. And it was inspiring to see that whether people were good leaders or bad leaders, whether they were effective or ineffective prior to COVID, they all, most of them leaned back on their own humanity where it was normal for people to pick up the phone and say, "Are you okay? Is your family okay?" We had more patience. If somebody was struggling and their kids were struggling, or he had a sick family member, we were okay. We sort of allowed them to take time. And for me, the joy in that was that's just good leadership. It's a shame that it took a pandemic for people to learn how to care about each other. And I really hope that those skills that people used naturally continue after COVID. Sadly, I'm sure a lot of them will forget. A lot of it's just what I consider good leadership ideals happened organically. So another one was, I talk about this idea of the worthy rival. So I don't believe in the sense of competition. We live in a world where there's no such thing as winning business. It doesn't exist, right? Where two organizations who sell basically the same product for basically the same price, basically the same quality, can both be wildly successful simultaneously. There's no winning. And so when companies talk about their competition, to me it doesn't make sense, because competition, a competitor, is another player you want to try and beat, which means you spend too much time focusing on what they're doing, and you spend too much time comparing arbitrary metrics, whether it's profits or revenues or market share or number of properties or number of employees or whatever it is, they're arbitrary. You get to pick what you're making the comparison, and you're all proud of yourself when you win at the end of the year, but the game doesn't end. I prefer the concept of a worthy rival. And a worthy rival is another, they may or may not be in your industry, but it's another player in the game who does one or many things better than you. In other words, their strengths reveal to you your weaknesses. And you can study them, you can be grateful for them, but trying competing against them is pointless. But the whole idea is that the only true competitor in the game of business is yourself. How do we improve what we're doing? And learn from those who do similar things to us rather than trying to beat them. And one of the things that I saw when COVID struck, which I found so fascinating, is everybody was so preoccupied with their own survival that the total number of companies that had any kind of presentation about our competitive threats was zero. Nobody was worried about their competitors because they were just trying to survive. Well, that's correct. That is the right mentality in a good market or a bad market, which is how do we, even if times are good, how do we survive for 50, 100, 150 years rather than how do we maximize this year and then blow all the wealth at the end of the year, So some of those things that COVID sort of revealed are really good leadership skills that I hope stay way beyond COVID.
Yeah. And so what are some of the, what are some of the change that companies need to make to have this less competitive approach and more, I guess it's what you write about in the Infinite Game, right?
Yeah.
What does that look like? Like, how does a leadership team like this think about, well, how do we focus on what we can do better versus how we can beat our competitors?
Right. Well, as I said before, you can pick your own worthy rivals. You can pick any company for any reason and say they're better than us. What can we learn from them? I'll give you a real life story that really captured this for me, and it's in the book, but I'll tell it to you. I spoke at a education summit for Microsoft, and then a few months later, I was invited to speak at an education summit for Apple. At the Microsoft Summit, this is back in the Steve Ballmer days. In the Microsoft Summit, the vast majority of the presentations by the executives spent most of their time talking about how to beat Apple. At the Apple Summit, 100% of the presentations were how to help teachers teach and how to help students learn. One was obsessed with beating their competition, the other one was obsessed with advancing their mission. At the end of my talk at Microsoft, they gave me a gift. They gave me the Zune when it was a thing. This was Microsoft's response to the iPod. And this little piece of technology, I have to say, was really very, very good. It was quite a good little piece of technology. It didn't work on an Apple, so I couldn't use it. That's a different problem. But it was very good. So at the end of my Apple talk, I was sharing a taxi with an Apple executive, and I couldn't help myself. I just had to stir the pot. And I turned to him, I go, Microsoft gave me their new Zune. and it is so much better than my iPod Touch. And he turned to me and he said, I have no doubt. And the conversation was over. Because he understood, this was an infinite-minded organization, he understood that sometimes your competitor will do something better than you, and sometimes you'll be better than them. There's no such thing as winning or losing. There's only ahead and behind. And where Microsoft was obsessed with beating Apple, Apple was obsessed with outdoing itself. And so the great irony is just a couple years after that, Apple released the iPhone. So where Microsoft was obsessing with how to make a better iPod, Apple was on to the next thing, didn't even care. And that's the whole idea, which is absolutely study and learn from the other players. You see, I don't even call them competitors. The other players in your industry. See what they're doing better. Like I said, it reveals your weaknesses and say, we can do better than ourselves. Grow. Eventually, they no longer become worthy of comparison anymore because you advance yourselves. But the whole idea is Apple was thinking about what they could do next, not how they could beat Microsoft to get more market share for an iPod.
So learn from others and how you can be better.
Absolutely. Like I said, their strengths reveal to your weaknesses, and that's a gift.
So let's switch topic, and we're amongst friends here, so we can be fully transparent.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the areas of opportunity that we have when we look at our employee engagement surveys is, and it's surprising to me because of our culture,
mm-hmm.
is trust.
Mm-hmm.
And especially at the mid-management level, and you know, we had conversation about this, but you talk a lot about trust and the importance of trust mm-hmm. within organizations. And I think that, you know, I'm super proud of, you know, the culture that we have that mm-hmm. goes way back. Mr. Sharp was talking about, you know, the golden rule well before anybody wrote about, you know, company cultures. I think we're also very genuine as a company, as leaders. Mm-hmm. And yet, here we have this opportunity, mm-hmm. right? Especially with our kind of, you know, hourly line employees. Mm-hmm. Any advice for us in terms of, you know, what we could think about doing differently?
So we have to remember trust is a feeling, right? It's not a command or an order. They trust me. It doesn't work.
Trust me.
It's like a used car dealer. It's a feeling, and that feeling comes from people feeling psychologically safe. You know, I use the story of Noah to help tell this, which is, you know, managers, not just his managers, stop by to say, are you okay? Is there anything you need on a regular basis? And he said it himself versus Caesar's Palace. He says, only at the Four Seasons do I feel I can be myself. His charming, funny, you know, quirky self. That the Four Seasons, one of the things that I love about you is, you know, when you get into luxury hospitality, it starts to feel like putting on white gloves, and it starts to feel tight, you know? And your definition of luxury is the opposite, which is it's much more human. And you allow for people not to follow a script, but you allow them to be themselves and interpret what it means to care their own way, which I absolutely love. The hardest part about it, and this time is more difficult now than ever before, because people are psychologically burnt out, people are exhausted, people are uncertain, anxiety is an all-time high, and young people who are coming into the workforce who've never really had a job before, you know, they have an expectation that is almost impossible to reach. So, for example, if you go back to like the 1950s or the 1960s, you know, we got our sense of purpose from church. We got our sense of community from bowling league. We got our sense of, we had barbecues on the weekends with our neighbors. And work was loyal to us, and we were loyal to work. We worked there until we got a gold watch. And, you know, but work was primarily a place that we got money to pay our bills. There's an entire generation now who, when I talk about the gold watch, they don't know what I'm talking about. Like, there is no such thing anymore between loyalty from a company or loyalty to a company. And we can thank Jack Welch for that, for, you know, 30 years of destroying that kind of thinking. It's true. I've made it my career to undo everything he did. And now, church attendance is way down. There's no such thing as bowling leagues anymore. We don't really know who our neighbors are. And so we're looking to work to provide all these things for us. We're looking to work that you have to give me a sense of purpose. You have to give me a sense of community. This is where my social life has to be. Now you have to agree with all of my politics as well. And the newest one, that's really since COVID, you have to be my place for therapy as well, right? And much like the unreasonable expectations people are putting on romantic partners, like no one can live up to the standard that you're hoping from me. I think that the standard that especially young people are putting on the expectations on a place of employment, on a work family, are impossible for any company to meet. And we've seen it in our company, and I've seen it in other companies as well, where, for example, and again, particularly young people, but not exclusively, because the stress is high. And remember, the way work used to work, and it's slightly different for you because it's still mostly in person, but the way work used to work, which is you go to work, and then after work you go out with your friends and you complain about work, right? Which is totally healthy, by the way. Bitching and moaning about your boss is totally fine, and that venting is totally fine, right? You have a safe space to let it out. But we didn't get the opportunity to go out with our friends. That was taken away from us, right? And so we went to work, whether in your business in person or but then we didn't go to the bar or the pub afterwards, or we didn't go out for dinner afterwards. We had no outlet for the stress. And so what we did was, because we're spending most of our time with people from work, we talk to people at work. And so now you have an increase of venting at work, beyond the usual amount. And especially if you're in a virtual environment, negative narratives or false narratives can swirl up like crazy. And worse, young people in particular, but not exclusively, would find the one or two empathetic ears that they worked with, and they would unload all of their problems, not just complaining about work and my boss, but my relationship is struggling. I'm struggling with my parents. I'm uncertain about the future. The war in Ukraine. George Floyd. It's like on one person venting because that person is empathetic and listens and takes it all in. But the problem is that person is now taking on everybody's stress. And so you have people who are burnt out, not from work. They're burnt out because they have overloaded by everybody else's problems now, because we're expecting work to be our therapy. And so we are in a period, and the good news is we can see some of the patterns. The bad news is, I think we're in such a period of incredible flux that what the future of work looks like is still so uncertain. Like, what does it mean to have a full-time job? Like, we saw this in COVID, I'm doing my work. Nobody cares if I start at 10 or go to 8 or work random hours, go to the vet in the middle. Nobody's really, it's okay. So I'll take a second full-time job. And, why can't, if I'm not letting anybody down and I'm able to maintain the pace, why can't I do that? And one employer will say, well, you can't do that because we pay your benefits. You're full-time with us. But who says? So the definition of full-time employment is up for grabs, right? I think people are demanding, and you've talked about this, people are demanding more flexibility because they had it. The Pandora's box is open. No putting the genie back in the bottle. Mm-hmm. And so, what is the definition of a full-time job? Is up for grabs. I think these things are unresolved, and I think there's an opportunity for any company, but a company like yours, to start to define these things so that other organizations can learn from you. Because the best organizations, we will copy them. Just by way of example, the way Airbnb handled its layoffs, they laid off 10% of their employees during COVID. And the way that they handled it was absolutely exquisite, right? You're doing something traumatic, and they were very generous with their packages, more generous than I know some of the behind the scenes. It was Brian Chesky, the CEO, who pushed for the company to be more generous. But the thing that I found most impressive was the day that the layoffs went into effect. That day, a website went up, airbnb.com/talent, where they put everybody's resume online in a central hub to help them find employment. So they didn't just let them go and give them money. They set them up to help them find employment. And by the way, we rated that website as well. We needed online talent. We needed programmers. We needed those things. We went straight to Airbnb.com/talent. The fact that they did that was brilliant because it shows that we care and treat you with dignity even if we have to do the awful thing of asking you to find employment somewhere else. We're going to try our best to, and others will copy them. That's what I mean about setting an example that others will copy.
That was an amazing answer. Wow. I learned a thing or two in here. Right? You like that? It was worth the trip. We could stop right here and we'll be well ahead of where we started.
Well, you're giving me too much credit because I didn't answer your question.
That's okay. I'm used to that. You're not a very good listener, but you are a good talker.
I have a long list of failed relationships that would agree with you. You are in a very difficult and uncomfortable position because I think leadership is more difficult now than it has ever been because you're dealing with human anxiety, you're dealing with human uncertainty, you're dealing with human ambition and human egos, and again, especially young people who think they know what they want and don't, who have certainty and are very outspoken and do not mind going around their boss's boss to come to you. You know, so you're going to be dealing with a 19-year-old saying, "Why am I not given this?" And you're like, "I don't need, where do you work?" You know? They have no fear of doing that. They also have no fear of quitting. And so we've seen this pattern where, remember, they're as a young generation, they're actually less equipped to deal with stress than previous generations. And so anxiety is high, and they're very confrontation avoidant. So, for example, we've seen this, where they feel like they deserve a raise, and they don't know how to ask for a raise, and so instead of asking for a raise, they'll just quit. And then sometimes with an email that says, "You don't value me, you don't pay me enough," you're like, we just had to ask. The answer, we love you, you know? So they're not afraid of quitting, but they are afraid of asking for things. Or if they do ask for things, it sometimes comes across very aggressive or accidentally black and white. Like, I've been here 8 months, and I would like a 50% raise. And I'm not exaggerating. I mean, and the problem is that they're ill-equipped. What they're doing is they're putting you in a yes or no position. So even if you say, "Here's the plan to get you that over the course of the next 8 months," they take it as a no, because I asked for something black and white. And so one of the things I think there's a huge opportunity for our company is to help people to build in training that helps them with their human skills. I hate the term soft skills. Please, let's never use that term again. You know, we talk about hard skills and soft skills. Those things are opposite. Hard and soft are opposites. They're hard skills, the skills you need to do your job, and human skills, the skills you need to be a better human being. And we want you to excel at both. And we're going to train you to do both. And some of the human skills that are underappreciated and undertrained in this day and age are how to have difficult conversations, how to have an effective confrontation, how to give and receive feedback. And I think we have to train those things so that if we equip them with the skills, instead of saying, "I've been here for 8 months, I want a raise," to say, "I've been here for 8 months, I really love it here. My goal is to stay here. I have financial ambitions. Can you help me get on a path to get to this number?" Now we can have a conversation, because it's now a continuum rather than a black and white question. But the point is I don't fault them. They lack the skills. And so I think there's a huge opportunity for an organization like yours to teach these young people coping mechanisms, stress relief, the biggest one being how to ask for help. That is the single biggest thing that is lacking at every generation, which is, "I am struggling, can you help me?" Whether it's personal or professional. That is absolutely lacking. And so we do unhealthy things to help compensate. Social media and other things.
Interesting. That can also inform our learning and development platform, obviously. Okay, we're going to switch topic again, and I wanted to make sure we have some time for Q&A, but those are important topics, and I don't want to stop you because you're obviously very insightful on any topics you bring in. So, diversity, inclusion, and belonging, big topics. Something that I think we're, if I were politically correct, I would tell you, oh yeah, we've made great progress and we're working really hard on it, and we have a great plan.
Yeah.
The truth is, you just look around the room, and the reality is, I think we have a long way to go.
Yep.
And it's not for lack of caring, or I think it matters to all of us. We also have a company where we promote from within heavily because that's how we got to where we are today.
Yeah.
And so, what are others doing? There's many companies that face the same reality that we do. What are other doings that, to your point earlier, that we can learn from? Not competitors.
Yeah.
But what was it?
Worthy rivals.
Worthy rivals.
Yeah.
That are doing that you say, hey, look at that. This could be a good direction.
Well, I think most importantly, and you seem to be doing this, most importantly is you see it as a journey rather than an event. I think the companies that are doing it wrong view it as an event, which is, we have this issue, we are not as diverse as we need to be, and so let's fix that. Flip a switch, go on a hiring binge, ta-da, right? And the problem is that's not how it works. Which is, this is a journey of making our organization more representative of the general population, and to say we have to do better. Just acknowledging that there is room for improvement, I think, is a big part of it. But obviously, where are you looking to hire? Who are you asking to make recommendations? All of these things matter. I mean, it's literally just opening the aperture. One of the things we have to recognize is we all have an inherent bias, which is we look for people who look like us, and to stop doing that. Also, go to other companies, ask them who's really good. But the fact that you're treating it as a journey that you will never actually, the point is you'll never actually be perfect. It's going to be a striving for the rest of time, because there's three words there. It's diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Belonging comes from your values and your purpose. Diversity comes from what it looks like, but inclusion is how people feel.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to hire somebody, but do they feel like they're valued and included and part of the organization? So all of those are strivings. None of those you'll ever be perfect at. None of those you'll ever complete. But it is a game of constant improvement.
So now I'd like to talk about something that you probably don't know much about, but it's okay, I've still asked the question. The purpose and why. So we just, we have this journey where we've had this amazing culture based on the golden rule, which is all about how we behave. And then we have been, thank you, we've thought about the impact that this can have on the world, and we have socialized our purpose, which I think resonated with everybody in the room, and even resonated with Mr. Sharp. And it was interesting because when Anna and I mentioned it to you, because obviously we wanted to get your perspective, you had nothing to say. You were like, "That's good." And I think
which is unusual for me.
Which is unusual because normally you destroy everybody. So, I mean, in a nice way. So
this is coming from the Air Force.
See, that's what I meant. See, Antoine, it was not a compliment.
It's gonna stay.
All right. So what about it resonated, and why did you feel it was a good purpose?
So, I mean, I have a bias for the word inspire. Inspire, to me, to make that an action rather than a result. To inspire. I love that. Which is, you think it's a standard by which you have to live by, right? Did you inspire someone today?
Yeah.
I have a thing. I've abandoned it lately, but I had 2 fish bowls in my room, and we can calculate. We know the average lifespan. We know our average lifespan. It's whatever the number is, 78 or whatever it is. So you can actually easily calculate the number of months, weeks, or days that you statistically have left on this planet, right? And so I bought a bag of marbles, and one marble represented each week that I have left on the planet. And I filled up the exact number, based on the statistics, in one fishbowl. And at the end, it's more inspiring than doomsday. I mean, it's just statistics. Yeah, no. But at the end of every week, I would ask myself, I actually got it down to the day, but at the end of every week, I'd say, was this a week worth living? Did I do something to inspire someone? And it's my own standard. And if the answer is yes, I move it to the other fishbowl. If the answer is no, I throw away the marble because I wasted it, right? And that's why I love the word inspire. I believe it is a standard to live by, and inspiration is how we make other people feel. You know, it's not, did you do something? I did something good today. I gave money to charity. That's not what it is. It's how did I make someone feel, and did they feel that their life is even better, even for 5 minutes, because of their interaction with me, right? And then genuine care, I think, is the second part of it, right?
Inspire the world to lead with genuine heart.
Right, with genuine heart. And again, I think that sets you up for values. Like, you know, and it's proprietary. I've never heard anybody talk about genuine. People talk about innovation and, you know, integrity. Like, those are generic words. But genuine heart is something you can own. And so, how do you amplify genuine heart? What are the standards of leading with genuine heart? What does it mean to lead with genuine heart? What are the values that mean that? Are you giving out a genuine heart award, you know, to the person in each property who exemplifies? And by the way to do that is to ask their teammates to vote for them, not come from leadership. Like, who inspires us to lead with genuine heart to the degree that we want to be more like our own colleague? Because a peer review is actually more powerful than a review from up on high. Because really we're all working for one person's approval, where a peer review is, my team loves me, and we're not angry when somebody wins that award. I deserve that.
Because I voted for him.
Because I voted for him, right. And it sets a standard for the rest of the team. So I think peer review, where we allow our own people to choose who within our group, who within our team, has inspired us to lead with genuine heart. And the irony is, they may not be your best individual performer, but they're probably your best natural leaders. It doesn't necessarily always line up with performance.